What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Other Side of the Firewall podcast, where we talk about the latest and greatest in cybersecurity news, as well as we highlight those movers and shakers and glass ceiling breakers, those people of color who've made it to the other side of the proverbial firewall. My name is Ryan Williams, and as always, I'm joined by Shannon Tynes.
What's up? What's up?
And Daniel Acevedo.
How's it going, guys?
What's going on? Thank you for tuning in. So today is our discussion episode. So Monday and Tuesday are topics, Wednesday discussion, Thursdays ask a CISSP, and then Fridays everything else, movies, books, games, all that good stuff. We call the rundown. If you're tuning in to us on the radio, you get all of it all at once. And then if you're watching us on public access, Channel 10 out in the Fairbanks, DC area, you get a lot of our interviews and things of that nature from the Ask a CISSP. So we're cross-pollinating over here. But without further ado, I give it to Shannon.
All right, everybody. This article comes from the Hacker News, written by Ravi Lakshmanan, and the title of it is Trump Terminates DHS Advisory Committee Memberships, Disrupting Cybersecurity Review, right? So, long story short, what ended up happening is DHS, they used to have these advisory committees that would go out, right? They go out into the public, they go out even inside the government, right? And they would see what's going on, pretty much is what it was, right? And then they would come back to DHS and they would advise them, right? They'd say, hey, this is what we're seeing. These are the mitigation efforts we should do for these things. And it was kind of a learning process, for DHS to do better, right? Like Department of Homeland Security, that's your Coast Guard, that's your Secret Service, Secret Service especially, they do more than just protect the president, right? There's other things that they look into, right? Like counterfeiting, things of that nature.
It's considered part of the Treasury, so
yeah. Department of Treasury, yep. So there's other things they do other than protecting the president, right? Or any other government officials, right? But they're losing a good bit of knowledge of what's going on out there in the industry by doing this. I don't necessarily think this is a good thing, right? The current administration, they saw fit to do this for whatever reason. They think it's in some way going to align with bettering things and how the government is going to work, but I tend to disagree, right? So when you have, especially when it comes to these big major companies that are out there, right? Because it's on these boards where, they started not figuring out, but where they come back with information from like big leaks that were out there, right? You got your Lapsus, you got your Apache, your Log4j, the Microsoft one from last year, right? That is information that needs to come home to the DHS, right? For them to be in the government and be like, okay, we need to learn from this, right? I don't want to say it's better to have the civilian companies make this mistake, right? I don't want to say it like that. Nobody should make this mistake, but it's good that they take that information, bring it home, and then we learn from it, right? It's kind of like I kind of think of it like when in the military, like we have our after action reports, right? Whenever you have some type of incident or something like that, you go with what happened, you get together with the different functions and say, hey, this is how we learn from this. This is how we implement things to prevent it in the future. And I think we're losing that knowledge with these advisory boards that are across several. And I know you guys will probably go over a few of them, but there's several different places that lost this information, this knowledge. But Daniel, what's your thoughts on this, man?
I don't know. It was a little confusing. I had to Google, did CISA close down like 17 times? Because I was like, what memberships? What boards? Is it a Costco membership? Like, what are we talking about right now? Like, I was really, I don't know. I guess I got hung up on the word membership. But I do know CISA. I've worked with CISA in the past when I was working for my previous company, at least a lot of their events and their web events. Because I like to be plugged in to cybersecurity and the government on that aspect, especially coming from a private organization. I think it's a big L. I think this is a big loss. Like you mentioned, they were critical in showing after actions and things of Log4j and Lapsus and those kind of things. And I think having an organization such as the CSRB that went out and found these things that work alongside both the government and the private sector and public sector is a huge gain, right? Because how business is done in both are very, very, very different, especially now that I'm working back with the government again. And it's just, you get the best of both worlds when you have, like a diverse environment. And I feel like this kind of cuts your legs off and makes you too siloed. So it kind of confuses me because if their focus is, and I quote, future committee activities will be focused solely on advancing our critical mission to protect the homeland and support DHS's strategic priorities. But how could DHS's priorities not be working with and finding what the big bugs are in the private sector from like operating systems as Windows, Microsoft, like Apple, Android, and things like that is what you would find in the private sector through boards like these. So I don't know. It's a little confusing to me. It's part of the government that I really don't like when new administration comes in. They kind of try to shuffle the cards around and see what fits best with kind of their priorities and directives. It's not the first time this happened. It probably won't be the last. However, tinfoil hat time. Though reading through the article again while you were talking, I realized
you gotta keep it near your desk so you can pop it on.
Yeah, I left it downstairs. I'm killing myself. I was gonna put it all around my head right now.
I want to say this before you go. I want to say this before you go into that, Daniel. I have a family. Okay, don't get us all canceled. Like, okay, but go ahead.
I'm just saying that the CSRB was in the middle of investigating the cyber attacks for targeting the telecom companies linked to Salt Typhoon, which was also looking into some key people in the government communications that may or may not be in office now or was going to be in office. But now it's closed down, so that investigation will probably be closed down too. But, I left my tinfoil hat downstairs, so that's the most I'll say about that. But it's very interesting that they were investigating that, and now all of a sudden all these memberships and these boards have to be canceled.
I didn't think about it from that perspective. But
Yeah.
I think that's more of a benefit or a boon to some, as opposed to you know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of work just to get them that benefit, because the same thing goes for all the inspector generals who were also terminated. I don't know if you guys heard about that. That was effective like on Friday. So maybe, but I think it's more like businessmen are going to do what businessmen do. They don't like oversight. So what do you cut? Oversight immediately.
Yeah.
What are you going to say, Shannon?
No. I'm agreeing.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying. Yeah. This is the same. I'm trying to do what I warned Daniel about. I'm trying.
Yeah,
we're
not politically affiliated here on the podcast, even though we all have our own opinions.
Yeah.
We can share
I'm
with
just
you in
putting
private.
I'm just putting tinfoil hat. It's the thing that jumps out at me in the article, and they talk about they're very adamant in the article with talking about that topic.
Right.
That one's a little bit grayer, but if you read the two last paragraphs, they get very political in what their views of how this played out.
But I so for me to play devil's advocate, I just think it's the second and third order effect. They're like, that also rules. We won't have to worry about that. But so I wanted to read this part. So I ran this through a friend of the show, ChatGPT, through a couple filters, because there are so many boards and they all have different aspects of the way that they communicate within the government and to the private sector. But I think its last couple sentences said to me are the best for what we're trying to talk about. So it says policymakers, including those relying on reports from the CSRB, e.g. Congress, will no longer have access to the insights and pressure from this board to enforce cybersecurity reforms among major corporations. And then it ends, the absence of these advisory committees may limit the government's ability to make informed decisions on issues critical to national security and cybersecurity. So obviously that's most important to us and to the platform. But again, I think this falls in line with big business owners do not like government oversight. So this is a boon to them, regardless of because your tinfoil hat probably that fiction is that fiction is probably nonfiction in many scenarios where they're like, yes, that's a fist pumping because they're like, hey, this won't be disclosed. But I think the major component to it is that we don't want the government in our business, which, as we know, when you don't have oversight or regulation, businesses are going to do what businesses do. Small businesses usually don't overreach to the extent of your billion and $1 trillion businesses. They're baking some crazy AI in their basements right now. They're going to Skynet us out of existence. And they're like, yes, no one is watching. So yeah, I'm a little bit concerned. But you have to hope, as business owners believe in their hearts, big business owners believe in their hearts, that they can regulate themselves. They're big boys and girls, is what they believe.
Weren't we already doing this before all this was put into place, though? Like, weren't we allowing them to do that before all these boards came on? And
it's a pendulum swing. Like, hey, y'all messing up, so we need to regulate you. And they're like, hey, we're overregulated. Stop regulating us.
But we can't backtrack in this aspect, right? So the DICAP, like if you're going purely government, real like NIST heavy, DICAP existed before, and it was so horrible, and it was around for such a long time. That's why the NIST and RMF came along, right, to fix all that up, to modernize it, and to put it into a roadway to the future of where technology was going, with IoT, integrated systems, and all these things. Now you're bringing AI onto board. So for the safety of the US and for how fast AI is going to go, because Sam Altman talks about it like, it's going to be here tomorrow, these technological advances that we're not even expecting yet. And then to think that big businesses are going to try to like push their way to have governments and regulation and less oversight.
Yeah.
Take
the guardrails off as we
that's Skynet.
birth
That is
a
literally
weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah, that is literally the road to Skynet in a nutshell overnight. That can't happen. I'm stuttering a little bit because I like the thought of it's like a little like jarring.
Troubling, yeah. So
Yeah.
to what you said though, I don't necessarily think DICAP was horrible. I think from its inception, it was good for what it was. But as with all technology, there are advancements, right? And it needs to get adjusted, right? And that's what I think we are taking a step back on, right? Like these boards were out there to promote that of, hey, we got to stay ahead of the game. Like this is what's going on out there. How do we prevent it? And that's what I think we've taken a step back on by doing this, right? Because again,
if nothing fills its shoes,
Yes.
If nothing fills its shoes, but what it looks like that's going to happen is that, hey, we're closing all these things down. The responsibility will still fall under CISA or all these organizations that do facilitate that function, but we'll have less people maybe to do these things, so they're going to be spread thin. Like do less with more.
They're going to be overwhelmed.
But how is CISA? But here's my question: who in CISA is going to go out to Microsoft, to Google, to Samsung, whoever it may be, right? To be like, hey, this is what we're seeing out here, right? That's what this did. Like if CISA still has to do it and they're not getting the budget, they don't have the council and they're not getting the budget to go out and do it, they're not going to do it. They're like, we have a different primary mission that we need to do. We can't do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there'll be lots of hearings, and then within those hearings, the bottom line is going to be like, hey, how come you guys aren't monitoring this? Well, you cut our budget. The congressperson. So it's a snake eating itself, right? It's a Oberos or whatever. So we'll see what happens in the next. I like to always say like a year or two. We'll see in 2025 how this impacts us, because they're building a ginormous AI data center here in the States, and they took some of the guardrails off just now. So if anything, it's going to be really cool. I love my dystopic movies. To live one, great. Because I'm not thinking like it's going to launch missiles into the sky or whatever. But if not used properly, like you're going to see brain drain. You're going to see disinformation. You're going to see potential disruption, DDoS attacks at scale that we've never seen before. Like just nonsense will be the thing, and in a time where we're trying to better protect our critical infrastructure and things of that nature. But don't worry, the UK still has rules. So, and those rules still impact us in some ways for the time being.
It's fine. It's fine now for the UK, right? Until China and Russia and Iran start ganging up on them, right? So let's just little bit of going back. Go back a couple articles, folks.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see how this will impact, because it's going to be like at the end of this year is going to be full of hearings. So I would like to go back to the soundbite and be like, see, look, and you have your Sam Altmans and your Zuckerbergs and your Elons talking to Congress all types of crazy ways, and you're like, well, you would already know this information if you kept your boards running, but you decided
it won't be everybody in the hearing saying it though. You got to remember that too, right? The first thing that'll happen will be like, certain people will be like, you are a credit to humanity. Let me start with that, sir. Like I don't. So.
Right. But yeah, so we'll see how this all unfolds. We all are in agreement that this was probably not a good idea. So if you need new board members at the end of the year, you have three right here who can join your team to help you out with this. But I'm sure there's people who could probably just be reinstated that are experts in this field. But Hit up all the websites that go by our name. Give me up at the other side of the firewall, the other side of FW, or Ask a CISSP. Personally, it's at RYRY Security Guy. That's RYRY Security Guy. You can find us pretty much on all the platforms. You can find me specifically on LinkedIn, most at my most responsive. And where can they find you, Daniel?
I linked it under my name, Daniel Acevedo.
There it is. Stay safe. Stay secure.